Parliament the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, flagging the state of municipalities in Gauteng. The reality, of course, is that across the country, municipalities are in distress. In parts of the Eastern Cape and the Karoo, drought-stricken areas are dependent on the work of NGOs to drill boreholes and bring them donations of food and animal feed. But cities, big cities such as Tshwane and Joburg, are owed millions in water and electricity tariffs. In Nelson Mandela Bay, politics has hamstrung the council. Add COVID-19 losses to that, and it's a disastrous mix. We've also got local government elections just around the corner next year. Well, let's discuss this now with economist at Municipal IQ, Karen Heese. Good evening, Karen. So what do you make on the Portfolio Committee on COGTA flagging municipalities in Gauteng specifically?
Good evening, Sally. Well, it's an interesting one because, as many of us would suspect and know, Gauteng has some of the more resilient municipalities in the country. So it does point, as you suggested, in part to COVID-19 and the fact that many of these municipalities are reliant on their own revenue raising, and this has been compromised. Non-payment, in fact, was flagged at the committee meeting amongst councillors who don't have the excuse of being furloughed or having their salaries reduced in any way. So there's just also the issue of culture of non-payment. So there is the financial component around Gauteng. One of the other issues that was flagged was the very high rate of senior posts that are not being filled. And this institutional instability, I think, points to a bigger problem, which maybe should be discussed at a sort of political level around institutional instability, where there have been really essentially unsuccessful coalition governments. One of the areas of focus has been Tshwane, and as we know, Tshwane has been without councillors for many months now, with toing and froing to the court as to whether it should be a dissolved council. Really a crisis around intergovernmental relations in the number of Gauteng municipalities where there has been a tussle as to who should lead it. So while we have what should essentially be the country's most robust municipalities, we see a series of concerns being raised in Parliament. And added to those, of course, we also know there were a couple of Gauteng municipalities that were affected by poor or, in fact, illegal VBS mutual investments. So it really speaks to the fact that local government is in trouble when some of its star performers are coming into sharp attention like this.
Yes, and as you say, the impact of COVID-19 has been felt, but also the concern around corruption. I mean, we've been reporting on the city of Joburg and allegations that money was just horribly misspent. I mean, budgets are tight as it is. Add corruption to that mix, and you've got a deadly cocktail, surely.
I think really that's absolutely true. And the crisis is we are looking at elections within the next year. And for voters, what is the solution? Where there were coalitions, where you had opposition leaderships, we saw corruption continuing. So I think there's very much a concern about what can be done at the electoral level. And I think it's very much an issue of political leadership from the national level cascading down. And that's why it's very important that the NCOP and Parliament are raising these issues. What they need is support from a very top political level through party structures, and then down to the level of premiers who put pressure on MECs. As you mentioned in your introduction, if we look at Nelson Mandela Bay, we have a municipality that's been effectively without a mayor for many months again, losing significant amounts of funding, facing day zero without effective leadership. And really the MEC has stepped back. There were threats of putting the council under administration, but a slight kickback from the council, and there was really just a stepping back, and residents are left in a very precarious situation. So we need strong, decisive leadership from the top, and hopefully the voters on the ground can respond to that.
And, you know, I think it was a few weeks ago now in the Northwest where we saw quite decisive action on a number of municipalities where the top three, the mayor, the speaker and the chief whip of those councils were just taken out. They were just removed from their positions, and a sense that we were going to see real firm action. But the problem is, of course, if you don't have anyone to replace them and you don't have a clear plan of how to revive flagging economies, it surely goes nowhere.
I think it's interesting to go back to Gauteng if we look at the issue of competence, because I think often there are two key reasons issued for local government's failure. The one is a lack of funding, and if we look at the rollover of grants, it suggests that funding isn't the fundamental issue, which goes to the second issue that's usually raised, which is a lack of capacity. And there is a lack of capacity in local government, but really it comes down to who's being appointed. And what we need to start asking, if we look at a province like Gauteng, which has a deep skills base, is why do we have managers not wanting to go into municipalities? And that speaks to political involvement, political interference, and it really being quite a hostile work environment. So what needs to happen is at a political level is professionals need to be insulated from the political day-to-day operations. You need to get top-level finance people in. You need to get managerial people in. These people exist. You just have to make local government an attractive space for them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Economist at Municipal IQ, Karen Heese, speaking to us this evening.